to make the webcomic streams, like the webcomic contest streams, very transparent and much more unfiltered than I usually am, because I really want you guys to be prepared and have like realistic expectations of what to expect, at least from my perspective, in my opinion. I am not on, the Webtoon board. I don't work at Webtoons, none of that stuff. This is just my own take of things. You might view it as pessimistic, you might view it as harsh, or whatever you want to say. But again, this is my opinion. Take it however you want to take it. I guess that stands, with the disclaimer. Take everything with a grain of salt. So let's go ahead and talk about this. Okay. There's so many people that I've been talking to. I've been getting a lot of opinions from people, like, where do you stand on the webcomic contest? Like, are you entering? Are you not entering? Like, what's going on? Like I'm hyped for it. I think it's a good opportunity. I think it's a bunch of fun. Good, we got that out of the way, so let's just move forward. I think people who are waiting, what you can do is consider like what it actually means to win the contest, or what you want from the contest. And so this video is really going to be talking about, like, if you win, like, where do you go from there? So what does it mean winning the contest? What does that mean for you? What should you go ahead and be thinking about and preparing about now? Number one, I'm not trying to give legal advice to people, but I definitely think you should hire a lawyer. Like, I don't care if you feel like you're really smart. I don't care if you feel like your friends are really smart. Legalese are hard to understand. Like, they are really difficult to get around. There's always tons of like loopholes, and there's tons of ways for like people to throw in things that you may not catch that makes your contract not necessarily what you want it to be. So I really feel that it is super important for you to go ahead and get a lawyer. What that means is you're going to have to prepare to spend money. So that's either going to come from your savings, from a job, borrowing it, whatever you need to do. And you might be like, I don't have access to these funds. Figure it out. Like, I don't know if you need to get like a part-time job to figure out how much it costs to hire a lawyer for an hour or something, but I definitely think that that's something that needs to be considered, so that you can make sure you're putting yourself in the best position as possible if you win and you receive a contract. Now, that kind of ties into the contract and the money. So if you do win and the prize is connected to a contract, are you going to take the contract? That's automatic. I think like people need to understand going in from the beginning. Do I want a contract with Webtoons? Yes or no? Like, automatically, that I feel like that would determine everything. And if you say no, then you're good. Like, you just entered the contest for like networking, for the fun of it, because you felt like this would get the most eyes on your series. Like, you could be using Webtoons all sorts of ways to like amp your own IP up, amp your own product up. Hi, Cantella. Thanks for joining. So I'm really trying to just make sure that if you are going the route of saying yes, understanding that the money could be potentially connected to signing on to be a Webtoon original. There's been like a few rumors that have been going around and things that I've heard. I haven't verified any of this, but from what I've heard and what I understand is that it is very likely that the prize money, that $150K, is tied to an originals contract. So we'll see once they release the actual rules if that is true. But if that is the case, are you willing to accept a contract with Webtoons to get the prize money? I feel like that makes it really hard for creators to understand, like, if I accept this money, I'm tied to a corporation now. Like, am I, air quotes, selling out to be able to produce the things that I want? So I'm just kind of like, dude, what do you think is the case here? Like, are you selling out? Are you giving yourself a leg up? Are you trying to like boost your career so that you can do this full time, so that you can produce more stuff? I feel like there's a lot of things to consider to figure out like how to move forward, and kind of establishing if you even want to work with Webtoons to begin with would automatically put you in the position of knowing, like, if something does come from getting this contract, you'll know like what you want to do. Hi E, what is up? Ephemir said, oh, What is that? A million percent it will be tied to an originals contract. That's how I feel. But see, I feel like I don't want to get myself in trouble and be like, yeah, you have to be a Webtoon original or whatever. Hey, you may not. I don't know. Anyway, if we're talking about the contract, so let's say that you win and then you get tied to a contract. The next thing would be to figure out, like, okay, how much is this contract going to pay me? Is it weekly? Is it monthly? If it's weekly, you need to calculate how much you need to live comfortably. Like, let me just explain this. If you are making, let's use this as an example. If your total expenses right now are $5,000 a month, and you're making that with your current job, your current whatever, and Webtoons comes and tells you, we will pay you $500 an episode for you to make content for us. And you're just like, oh, that sounds amazing. I'm not making that for my hobby. And you go ahead and sign the contract. $500 a month is only $2,000, and that's with no taxes. So at the most, let me rephrase. At the least, you are making $3,000. Not $3,000. You are in a deficit of $3,000. Like, you cannot live off that. Like, that is eviction type levels of payment. So you need to go ahead and calculate your expenses and figure out exactly how much you need. So if they do offer you a contract and it says some ridiculous low number that is not feasible for you to live off of, you can automatically see the contract and say no. Like, if it's like $800 an episode and your monthly expenses total more than $3,200 a month, then obviously you are going to need more money than that. Like, I don't understand how people do not compute this sometimes. And I'm not trying to blame creators, but I'm trying to say, like, you need to be, like, you have to stand on your own business. Like, Webtoons is talking to you to an extent as if you're your own business. Like, they're talking to you not necessarily as an employee. Like, they're talking to you as a company that they're working with to an extent. So it's important for you to understand your roles. Like, Webtoons is not looking out for you like they would one of their editors or one of their social media managers or another employee that directly works from them. They're looking at you as something completely separate from themselves that they don't have 100% accountability to. Hi, Apple. Apple said, yeah, I'm still waiting for the full terms, but it doesn't make business sense for the company to give the final price $150K and get nothing from the artist. Agreed. Like, Webtoons is a business, and this business is looking out for itself. It's trying to grow itself. It's not trying to do anything else but profit and continue to get clicks and eyes on their page. So them giving you this money, they're expecting a return on that money 3 times full, usually. Like, I feel like that's the usual business practice. If I spend X to make this, then I'm expecting 3 times of what I spent back in revenue. Apple said, the contest is advertised differently than previous ones in the past for sure. I would be interested to see what you mean by that, Apple. Can you expand upon that? So anyway, getting back to the contract, definitely consider, like, what you need to live comfortably, because remember, living paycheck to paycheck is not fun. So even being able to cover your own expenses is kind of interesting in the sense that, like, could you do it? Yes. Would it be a happy life? I feel like that's debatable because, like, let's say you want to get the new iPhone or you want to get, you know, a new car or something like that. Because you're so fixed on a budget, like, you won't have a lot of wiggle room, in my opinion. So I think that, you know, you really need to consider what is a comfortable price for you to get paid from Webtoons for weekly episodes. The content creator coach said, do you think the originals contracts would be more for the higher tiers, like the top 4, or all the tiers? So I think that based off of previous contests, I think Instant Miso said on the Webtoon Wave not too long ago. If you haven't watched that video, check it out. If I remember, I'll link it. But I think she said that she did not win and she did not place, but Webtoons still reached out to her. So I think Webtoons, if they find a series that they feel like has potential, they're going to reach out to you so that they can sign it because they want more new, fresh ideas, fresh content on the website. Okay. Let's also talk about the fact that whenever you enter into a contractual agreement, I think that there's a give and take. This is my opinion again, like, guys, don't come for me, but I feel like you're going to have to change your IP. And what I mean by that is the way you've structured your story. Webtoons has a very specific group of people on their platform, a very specific group of people that are active on their platform, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, every place should have its own, identity, have its own like safe space for people who enjoy that type of content. What I'm trying to say is I feel like Webtoons knows its market that's on the platform and it tries to cater towards it. So they might ask you to make adjustments to certain plot points, maybe certain character designs, certain themes in your story that makes it more appealing for the platform. Is that necessarily the case? I want to say not all the time, because I remember, I think it was a stream that I Am the Grim Reaper did where she talked about like she knew in her heart like the fans would respond specifically to a certain character in a certain way, and she wanted to keep it that way. Her editor said no, you should change it, but she fought for it, or she told them no or whatever, and she kept it the way it was, and it was successful. My point is, I feel like you're going to get pressure from Webtoons to change things, and I think you need to kind of be in the frame of mind of, am I going to be willing to change, or am I going to say no and not listen to them? Because it's kind of their job to make sure the series is successful. It doesn't, like, it behooves Webtoon to always create a successful story. Like, they do not want any duds. Like, that does not work for them. Like, they want things that are going to keep people coming to the platform, keep reading, keep coming back every week. They want people spending fast pass money or coins or whatever it's called, so that, they can make revenue and profit from it. So Webtoons does not want any sort of sucky series, but Webtoons has an identity, and they're going to try and push that identity on other series. Are you prepared for that? Are you prepared for that pressure, for that type of stress, for that sort of environment? Are you prepared for like constant deadlines? Are you prepared for, dealing with other obligations that go along with your IP that they might not agree with? Like, maybe your IP and the direction of it breaks terms of service that Webtoons has. Webtoons is a little more lenient with originals, but I'm just saying, like, all of that is something to consider, because if you have a story and you're wanting to tell it in a specific way, especially down the line, like say it gets much more graphic towards the midpoint or the ending, Webtoons may be like, no, you can't post that here. Are you prepared to go ahead and tell them that right now? Or do you want to wait? Like, there's all sorts of things to consider when it comes to your IP and how you want to present it to the world versus how Webtoons would want to present it. Apple and Tangerine said Purple Hyacinth was a runner-up in the previous contest and eventually got a contract. Yeah, I definitely think being a winner doesn't guarantee a contract, but I think that it puts you in a very good position with Webtoons to receive one. The content creator coach said, true, it's still hopeful then. I'm not sure what you're referring to, but I will say I'm glad whatever I said was clarified. Apple and Tangerine said, sure, the contest that was actually similar to this back in 2018-ish, there was a similar prize pool, but you had to sign a contract to get the prize money. I do know exactly what you're talking about, Apple. I've been researching some of the other contests, and I saw that this contest actually almost, I like the exact same type of contest was back in 2018, almost exactly, like down to the categories and everything. Okay, the next thing, giving up ownership. So we've been kind of talking about that with changing the IP to make it fit Webtoons. Webtoons may want a piece of your story. So I think I've mentioned this before, and I feel like that could be anywhere from 10% up to 30%. I don't think Webtoons would necessarily take more than that, because I feel like that might be a little bit of highway robbery, and that other publishing houses generally don't take that much. So Like more than 30% is what I mean. So I feel like that's kind of an uphill, downhill battle sort of thing. So I think it's really important to kind of consider like, how much am I willing to give up to become an original? Because like it is a normal practice to give up a percentage of your IP. And I'm not sure if people agree with this or disagree with this. I need to poll more creators. Like I would love to know your guys' thoughts. But do you think like Webtoons wants nothing? Like if they're helping produce, helping market, helping whatever a series, do you think they don't want anything from you? Like they're going to want a piece of the pie, and getting a small percentage of the series kind of like connects them to you in terms of if this does become successful, they'll be making revenue from you. I would love to know, like here in chat, as well as if you're watching this in the future, like what you think is a reasonable amount of percentage to give up to Webtoons, or do you feel like they should get no percentage of your IP? What? Because I feel like giving up a small percentage now to jumpstart your career is very reasonable. And we're talking about, if you're talking about like you just want to create for the rest of your life, like giving up 10 to 20% of your series so that you could start your own career, network, get all of the people, like you could formulate yourself to be the next Brandon Sanderson, where you have your own studio, you're your own agent, you're doing all the deals yourself. And Brandon Sanderson started in traditional, or I shouldn't say started, but he worked in traditional, and he's gotten to the point of where he is from how he played the game. So I'm like, you have to be able to play the game a little bit, in my opinion, to break the game, if you know what I mean. Apple and Tangerine said, same categories and same amount of winners. Oh, nice. I didn't know it was the same amount of winners. That's very, very cool. RU said, what did the 18 contract say about IP ownership and merchandising? I'm not sure what you're referring to. Apple and Tangerine said, it depends on the contract. I've heard some contracts add a clause where agent and printing rights are handed to Webtoons, but it varies. Always have a lawyer to check. Yes, that's what I addressed earlier. I feel like these contracts vary so much, and that's why none of them have leaked, because I think every contract is very specific to the creator. And so I feel like if someone was ever to leak the contract, Webtoons would know exactly who broke their NDA or who to go after. If they're like, oh, you didn't break your NDA, well, you allowed someone access to it. So I think it really, really varies. Like, that was something else I wanted to kind of talk about, is adaptation. You have to ask yourself, how would you feel about third parties developing your product? Which Tangerine kind of talked about a little bit earlier when they were talking about an agent and printing rights. I feel like there's a lot to consider when you think about, like, do I have control over, my own deals? Well, Webtoons is like, well, we're going to be your agent. Understanding what an agent is and what they do for you is really important, because if you give that power to Webtoons, like, it's kind of a mixed bag. Like, there can be benefits to it, but I feel like there's more downside to it. They already have access to you on the platform. Now this is your chance to go out and make other deals and connections. So there's a lot to consider in that. And we've seen disgruntled people leave Webtoons, and we've seen people talk about how Webtoons is like, not happy with them using another agent or using someone else to produce the physical copies of the book. So all of that is something to consider and something to go ahead and be upfront about when you create an episode. Or not an episode, when you are doing business with Webtoons, creating episodes for them. RU said, it depends on the terms, probably would be willing to give a taste, but I want to sling my own merch. So I think they're generally okay with merch. I think it's really the printing that's the issue, like printing books. So if you're talking merch like keychains, shirts, that sort of thing, I feel like Webtoons is somewhat okay with that, but they really want those printing rights. The content creator coach said, I think if it's a reasonable percentage and depending on the details, then it could be a launching pad and really could establish people as creators for the future. I don't think I'd be opposed to it. I definitely think take it with a grain of salt, but this is something to consider right now instead of waiting until you get the contract. Because listen, when you get the contract, you're going to be excited. You're going to be happy. Endorphins are going to be flying. You're going to be thinking, I could be like an original right now. This is what I've dreamed of. And you're very emotional. If you've already ran through the scenarios, you've already thought about this, you've already made up your mind as to what you want to do, then I really feel like this is very reasonable to go ahead and consider right now, opposed to waiting in the future when your emotions are high and you just say yes without really counting all of the costs and working through everything. Like, this is preparation that you do so that when things happen, you can overcome those emotions, that excitement, and be like, hey, I need to review this contract and get back to you before I actually give you an answer. MI Art said, Winter May got to create 100 episodes in contract, I wonder. I think it probably varies per the potential of the series. Like, I could see it being a 50 episode contract. I think I remember a creator who did YouTube mentioning that they were in a 50 episode contract. And I think for other creators, it probably just really varies. Like, it could be 100 episodes. Like let's say if they say you're in a 3-year contract, does that mean 150 episodes? But of course, you're going to take vacation and breaks and all of that stuff. So I feel like that would be another thing to kind of consider and plan. So going back to adaptations. So this is another thing. So likely, you're trying to get a deal for maybe an anime, for a live action, for something. How do you feel about someone else developing that and, working off of your material? Generally, when you have that sort of situation going on, you kind of give them the rights to do whatever they want. Like, you don't have a lot of control, and they kind of like adjust and edit the story, take things out, kind of like push down a lot of the details that might be important to you. How do you feel about that? Are you comfortable about that? Because likely, I feel that Webtoons is going in the direction of doing more stuff in Hollywood, doing more stuff like visually for the big screen or the small screen. And there's probably going to be a clause in future contracts about selling your IP rights or selling your series to a studio. And when you do business with the studio might be like, we want full creative control. Are you going to say no? Like, I feel like it's kind of hard to say no to projects like that, but a lot of things, things happen. So it's something to really consider. Next thing I would think you would want to consider is marketing and banners. Like, this is just things to understand. Like, if you win the contest, like, are they going to be helping you? Are they going to be like helping push forth your brand, push forth, you as a creator? Are they going to be advertising for your series? Are you going to have to do all of the work? Because there are a lot, like, Webtoon signs a lot of series, but I'm positive I feel like I see the same series all the time. So it just makes me wonder if the advertising for series is the same. Is it contractual? Is it not in contracts? If it is in contracts, like how does it work? Like, does everybody get a little bit of the marketing pool? But then if everybody's getting a little marketing, that means like you're very limited in your reach. So it's still like you would still have a lot of the marketing on your shoulders. Like, are they going to help you, not help you? Like, I feel like Mangi, the Let's Play creator, left because they were not marketing their series the way they felt it should be. And I thought Mangi was a pretty successful creator. C said, I'm wondering if everyone who wins gets offered a contract, because there's a lot of series and it would be annoying to see if half the winners are romance in the end. Half the winners can't be romance in the end. Because we have 4 categories, and I think that it would be kind of crazy if Webtoons like only picked from one category. I do think like there might be more romance, because Webtoons kind of skews towards romance and fantasy, I guess. So I think that it's very reasonable for them to pick more romance, because that's what does really well on their platform. Apple said, my issue with the call to action contest, I didn't even know some of the entries were already originals. Who was originals already? Like, I'm very curious about that. Like, what do you mean? Like, they were originals in the past, or they were originals currently, like during the contest? Because Webtoons made it very clear that you cannot currently be an original in the FAQ notice. So you could have been an original in the past, but if you had any sort of contract with them ongoing or had an upcoming series with them, then you cannot enter the contest. C said yes. The Mafia Nanny is exactly the same as Double Agent on the same platform. Double Agent? I've heard of Mafia Nanny. Is Double Agent a webtoon? Apple said, I checked, they were already 10 to 40 episodes in, even though I was looking forward to their release. Their entries got turned into an original. Okay? So at the end of the day, I feel like what you really need to ask yourself is, do you want to be a Webtoon original? If it's a hard no, then you're automatically out. So becoming an original means that you're now an independent contractor, which means you're going to have to do a bunch of things on your own. Again, this is referring back to what I was talking about earlier. Like, are you a Webtoon employee? I mean, yes, but not really. You're a business that's doing business with Webtoons. Like, so it's a little bit different. So I want you to just realize that this means that Webtoons is not going to pay for assistance. You're going to have to do that yourself. Like, if you need an assistant, you need 2 assistants, all of that comes out of your budget. So it's so important to understand like your weekly or monthly allowance, because you've got bills to still pay. And if you need an assistant, that's coming out of your pocket. So it makes it really, really hard to manage hiring assistants, hiring help, hiring an additional editor, whatever else you might need for your series when you're very limited in the funds that you make from Webtoons. And that's why I'm like, you've got to consider the amount of money. Like, don't just YOLO it and hope for the best. I mean, some creators, originals, I feel like have said like they were just like, yeah, I did it and it worked out. I mean, it definitely could. But I also feel like, you got to be realistic nowadays, and you got to understand that bills ain't cheap. Inflation is here. So really, really consider everything that you need to when it comes to being an original. And I would say definitely look up like what's involved in being an independent contractor. Like Webtoons, the way they pay you means that you have to pay back your own taxes. They're not taking taxes out. So like you have to set aside money to pay your taxes. Like there is a lot of stuff that needs to be paid. And this all comes back to, will you be able to live comfortably? Like comfortably by your means, not necessarily comfortably in terms of, am I able to pay all of my bills? Because you could pay all of your bills and not be living comfortably. Living paycheck to paycheck is something very hard to do. Like it limits a lot of what you're capable of doing, a lot of what you're capable of buying in terms of like fun money, in terms of being able to like get new cars, get new phones, go on trips, go out to eat. Like all of this will affect. And you have to think about, if you're having to hire assistants, plural, then you're having to pay them a salary. And let me just kind of like educate some of you from what I've learned. I was thinking about hiring somebody to do the art for the contest that's upcoming. It's the cheapest that I've seen was about $10 a panel. So that means there's 40 episodes. Not 40 episodes. There's 40 panels in an episode that's required by the contest. So that means at a minimum, I would have to pay $400 for one episode. That's not including if I had more panels in that episode. So if I had more panels, let's say it was 60, that's $600. $600 for someone to do art to help me. Now that's someone doing all of the art. That's really cheap. But so I'm just giving you an idea. And so for 3 episodes, that's that's $1,200. So I just want to say, like, understand that if you're only making $3,000 and you're paying over $1,000 for an assistant, that leaves you with less than $2,000 for yourself. And that is including paying your bills. Like, really count the cost on this stuff. Like, look up, if you feel like you're going to need an assistant, how much it's going to cost you, what you're able to pay. Like, there's all sorts of things to consider and determine if this is the life you want to live. Okay, so I did have a really cool creator experience that I wanted to share with you guys. It was somebody I was talking to, so I'm going to leave their name out of this, but I just want to share this with you guys. Give me 1 second. I've got to pull it up. So I asked them how their edits were going. I was just really curious. Like, we've been trying to like amp each other up and touch base with each other. And they said, so after a lot of time of thinking about the contest, I think I'm not really that eager for the monetary prize as much as the networking and exposure part. I realized that if I'm going to modify some elements of my already published work when it comes to the narrative and all, I'll be somewhat sabotaging the story and plot, as my work is heavily relying on subtle and gradual escalation of events. So things will normally tend to be filled with ambiguity, especially after getting feedback. It gave me more insight on what really my story needs when it comes to achieving that aspect of going into the story in a slow progression of events. So I just want to pause right there really quickly and just say, like, so me and this friend, we've been helping each other, and we were kind of like giving critique on their story, and me and another person, I think, we're trying to talk about like what we thought would be the most influential or impactful way to tell the story so that it could like grab people that are, you know, on Webtoons, like Webtoon readers and whatnot. And so like it changed a lot of those setup for the story the way the creator had it. And so the creator took back the feedback and they really thought about like what we were saying, and they determined for themselves like, this is not the way I want to tell my story, which is completely valid. Like, if you feel that your direction of telling your story is the way you want to do it, that's completely fine. That's 100% up to you. But you have to realize that it's a personal choice. Like, no one can make that choice for you. And you have to realize that there are going to be ways of telling a story that are different and that are opposing to your own views. And so you have to be confident enough in yourself as a creator to say, this is the way I want to tell my story. This is the way I want to become an original. And this is the way I feel like progresses the story in the best possible way. So then they said, the decision of joining the contest is just because I want to gain the experience and benefit from the networking part. I'm not really aiming for the contract or a prize. If it comes, that's good. If it doesn't, that's good too. I'm in the YOLO mindset where I just want to try for the thrill of it. So I think that's all I'm comfortable sharing from this conversation because it is private, but I really think like this was a really, you know, beneficial conversation. Like having someone to critique your project, having someone to give you honest, heartfelt feedback on your series, and then for you to determine like, hey, I really agree with that, and I think I'm going to implement that for the contest is important, instead of just blindly following what someone tells you, what someone's critique is. And so I really respect the creator's choice and what they want to do. And if they end up being successful, I mean, I'll eat rocks. And I mean just for the contest, because of the advice that I gave was completely opposite to that. So I mean, I think the story's good and I think it has potential to win. So hey, to my friend out there, if you're listening to this, just know that I 100% believe in you. And when you win the contest, I'll remember this moment. Okay, MI Art said, I'm really excited that they opened thriller genre in the contest. On the other hand, Thai webtoons reject horror stories, thrillers, sell less, and isekai stories, too many of them. I think it's really cool. I'd be interested to see what the thriller genre entries, like how they do, what they release. I think that'll be really cool. I'm waiting to see that. Eerie, I hope I'm saying that right. Since the contest kind of make the author visible for original opportunity, I felt like, why not join the contest? Exactly. Just go ahead and join. Like if you're feeling it, then join. If you're not feeling it, it is what it is. Like I don't think there's any downside to joining, but hey, that's just me. All right, so I'm changing things up. The question to the community is, what does your ideal contract look like? So you guys can comment about this in chat now. If you're watching this in the future, leave your comment down below. I really want to know, like, does your ideal contract, is it 100% you owning the IP? Is it 100% you giving out exactly what you feel is fair in terms of, like, the percentage of income to yourself? Like, I want to know all of those details. I think that'll be really interesting. Creator shout out is going to the Jock's Secret Crush. You can pause the screen to read the summary, and the creator is Kitty Cash 92. Please check them out. The series looks like a bunch of fun, and I really like the character designs. Also, a huge thank you to all of my patrons. I really appreciate you guys. And if you guys would like some extra content, I've been kind of slow on this lately, but I'm amping back up to release a bunch of stuff that I want to talk about. I really want to talk about Wicked. I'm very excited about that. And so with that, I will say thank you so much, guys. I will catch you in the next video.